The busy city streets hum with energy. The cars honk, pedestrians rush by, and the usual rhythm of life seems almost robotic. Amidst the chaos sits Jack, a homeless man, his ragged clothes and disheveled appearance blending into the background of the bustling sidewalk. He's in his early 40s, a man whose life hasn't been kind, yet there's a certain calm in his demeanor. His face is worn by years of hardship, but his eyes still hold a flicker of hope, something most people overlook. Across the street, a luxury car pulls up, and Richard Carter, a billionaire businessman in his mid-50s, steps out. Dressed in an expensive suit, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, Richard exudes an air of success. His posture is that of a man who owns the world. He walks briskly, his mind focused on an important meeting ahead, unaware of the impending danger closing in on him. Suddenly, from the shadows of a nearby alley, two masked assailants step into the street, brandishing weapons. Richard doesn't see them until it's too late. Before he can react, the attackers surround him, demanding his wallet, his watch, everything he's worked for. Richard freezes. For the first time in his life, he feels completely powerless. Jack, watching from the corner of his eye, sees the entire scene unfold. Without hesitation, his instincts kick in. Despite his tired body, Jack's adrenaline surges, and he rushes toward the attackers. He shoves one of them, knocking him off balance. The surprise on the attackers' faces is enough for Richard to snap out of his shock and start moving. But Jack, driven by a sense of right and wrong, pushes further, protecting the billionaire even at the risk of his own life. Just as the assailants are about to overpower Jack, Richard finally finds the strength to run, sprinting away from the chaos. Jack, wounded but resolute, stands firm, even as he feels a sharp pain in his side. The attackers flee, but Jack remains standing, blood seeping through his clothes. The flashing lights of the police cars reflect off the restaurant's windows, cutting through the evening's tension. The once bustling restaurant now feels eerily quiet as the murmurs from the shocked patrons fade into the background. Richard, still reeling from the events that unfolded, stands frozen near his table, his pulse still racing. His hands tremble slightly as he tries to process the chaos. His mind keeps replaying the image of the homeless man, Jack, who risked his life without hesitation to save him. Richard's mind is clouded with disbelief. How could a stranger, a man with nothing, be willing to put himself in harm's way for a person he'd never met? And yet Jack had done just that. As the police continue to take statements and gather information, the quiet hum of the room gives Richard a strange sense of distance, as though he's no longer part of the world he once knew. His gaze drifts across the room, searching for the man who changed everything in an instant. Jack is standing near the kitchen door, trying to regain his composure, his shoulders hunched as he attempts to calm his racing heart. His eyes are distant, the weight of what just happened clearly weighing heavily on him. Jack isn't used to the attention, and he doesn't seek recognition. He's a man who has lived his life largely unnoticed, surviving on the fringes of society. This moment, this act of courage, has thrust him into a world he doesn't quite understand. Richard takes a deep breath, steadying himself. He knows he needs to speak to Jack, to acknowledge the life-altering decision he made. But his steps toward him are slow, deliberate, unsure of how to approach the man who saved his life. The air between them is thick with the weight of unspoken words. "Hey," Richard says, his voice softer than usual, almost as if the gravity of the moment has affected him in ways he can't quite articulate. "That was incredible. You saved my life." Jack, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, looks down at the floor, his hands fidgeting with his apron. He shrugs, trying to brush off the praise. "Just doing what I can, sir. Just doing what anyone would do," he replies, his voice steady, though there's a hint of unease in his words. It's clear Jack doesn't want to be seen as a hero, doesn't want the focus to be on him. Richard, unable to accept such a modest response, shakes his head slowly. "No," he says, his voice firmer now. "You didn't just do what anyone would do. You chose to risk your life. That's not something everyone can do." Jack looks at Richard, his expression unreadable. The words seem to hit him in a way he wasn't prepared for. He's never been told he's more than just a man struggling to survive. The humility he carries, The quiet strength that defines him doesn't make sense in Richard's world of wealth and status. There's a dissonance between them, yet in this moment, it feels as though they are both seeing each other more clearly. Richard steps closer, his gaze softening. "I owe you," he says, his voice full of sincerity, something raw that he hasn't shown anyone in a long time. "I'll find a way to make it right." Jack, still uncomfortable with the attention, shakes his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't do it for anything," he replies. There's no arrogance in his words, no desire for reward. It's simply the truth. Richard, taken aback by Jack's selflessness, looks at him with a deeper understanding. "I know," he says, his tone more earnest than before. "But I want to give you something," he adds, the weight of the moment heavy between them, as Richard searches for a way to repay the unrepayable. Jack looks at him, unsure of what to say. His humility and quiet strength make Richard even more aware of the difference in their worlds. Richard takes a step closer. "I owe you," he says, his voice full of sincerity. "I'll find a way to make it right." Jack, still trying to avoid the recognition, shakes his head. "I didn't do it for anything." Richard looks into his eyes, a spark of understanding flashing in his gaze. "I know, but I want to give you something," he says, the weight of the moment heavy between them. The evening has fallen into a strange calm. The chaos of the earlier robbery has dissipated, leaving behind an air of quiet reflection in the restaurant. The bright lights, which once seemed harsh and unforgiving, now glow softly, casting long shadows across the floor. The hum of the restaurant's usual rhythm has slowed, and the conversation among the remaining patrons is subdued. Richard, still processing the adrenaline of the past few hours, sits in a quiet booth at the back of the restaurant. His mind races with thoughts of what just transpired. Jack, sitting across from him, looks like a man out of place. His body is tense, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the table, as if he is trying to escape the weight of the moment. He isn't used to being the center of attention, certainly not for something heroic. This is a world he's never felt part of, and yet here he is, in a booth with a billionaire, having his life completely upended. Richard watches Jack closely, noting the way his shoulders are hunched and how his eyes avoid contact. He can sense Jack's discomfort with the attention, his reluctance to accept the praise that's being heaped on him. But Richard knows something must be said. Something must change in the course of this night. "I don't think you understand what you did tonight," Richard begins, his voice steady but carrying an emotional weight. The words hang in the air between them. "That wasn't just bravery, that was pure selflessness." Jack shifts uncomfortably, clearly not used to being recognized for his actions. He looks down at his hands, the words he's been repeating all night coming out again. "I was just doing what anyone would do," he says, but there's a tremor in his voice this time, a hint of uncertainty that betrays his attempt at humility. Richard gently shakes his head, his gaze softening as he studies Jack. "No," he insists, his voice softer but firmer now. "What you did was rare. You didn't think about yourself. You didn't hesitate. That's the kind of courage you don't see every day." Jack looks up, his eyes meeting Richard's for the first time that night. The sincerity in Richard's voice is undeniable, and for a moment, Jack feels seen, not as a worker, not as someone overlooked, but as a person worthy of attention and respect. Richard leans forward, his expression serious but kind. "I want to offer you something," he says, his words deliberate. "A job, a chance. Not as a waiter, but something more. I believe you have more to offer than just surviving." The words seem to hang in the air, too big for Jack to immediately process. He blinks, caught off guard. "A job?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper, as though he's not sure if he heard Richard correctly. "But I've been doing this for so long. I don't know what else I can do." His words trail off, the doubt clear in his eyes. Richard's smile is warm, patient. "That's the thing, Jack. You've been doing this to survive, but I believe you have the potential for more than that. I want to help you. I see something in you." His words are full of hope, not pity, and Jack can hear the conviction in them. Jack is still hesitant, the weight of a lifetime of survival instincts holding him back. The thought of stepping out of the only life he's known, of leaving behind the struggle for something more, feels like a dream, something too far out of reach. But Richard's sincerity, the way he looks at him, makes something inside Jack stir. The idea of a different life, a better life, takes root within him, even as uncertainty lingers. The road ahead may be unclear, but for the first time, Jack considers it. And the thought of walking that road with someone like Richard guiding him offers a flicker of hope that he can't ignore. The days following Richard's offer are filled with turmoil for Jack. He lies awake at night, his mind racing. The decision to leave behind the only life he's ever known, to step into an entirely new world, is both exhilarating and terrifying. He's always seen himself as just a waiter, a man who exists in the shadows of the people around him. Now, the possibility of something bigger is on the horizon, but the doubt clings to him like a heavy weight. He wrestles with his pride, unsure whether he deserves the opportunity that Richard has so generously offered. Every time Jack walks through the restaurant, his steps feel heavier. The hustle and bustle around him seems distant, the faces of the customers blurring into the background. For the first time, he feels like an outsider in his own life. The familiarity of the restaurant, the routines he's followed for years, all seem so far removed from the life Richard has promised him. He begins to wonder if he can truly leave behind his identity as the invisible worker, the person nobody notices. Can he really make a change? Is he even capable of stepping into a life beyond survival? As the days pass, Jack feels more and more lost. The world around him seems unchanged. Customers come and go. The buzz of conversation fills the air, and the plates keep coming out of the kitchen. But inside, Jack is torn. He knows this decision is bigger than just a job. It's a chance to redefine himself. But what if he fails? What if he's not capable of thriving in this new world? The internal struggle wears him down, and one evening, as he walks through the doors of the restaurant, he feels a deep sense of hesitation. The noise of the bustling customers seems to fade away as his footsteps carry him to the back of the restaurant. He takes a deep breath as he approaches Richard's office. The door ajar, Richard sitting at his desk, waiting. Richard's calm presence feels like a contrast to the storm inside Jack's mind. But Jack knows that he can't run from this decision anymore. With a sense of finality, Jack steps into the office, his heart racing in his chest. The door shuts behind him with a soft click, and the air between them is thick with anticipation. He looks at Richard, whose gaze is unwavering. The weight of the moment hangs in the air, and for a moment, Jack considers turning around, walking away, staying in the comfort of what he knows. But then, something shifts inside him. The seed that Richard planted has taken root, and despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, he knows what he has to do. "I'll take it," Jack says, his voice steady but filled with a mix of nerves and resolve. The words feel heavier than they should, as if he's signing up for something much bigger than just a job. But deep down, Jack knows this is more than just a job. It's his chance to finally start living, to break free from the shadows of survival and embrace a new future. Richard's face lights up, and for the first time, Jack feels something stirring within him. A spark of possibility, of potential. This moment marks the beginning of something entirely new. It's no longer about surviving, it's about living. And for the first time, Jack feels like he's stepping into his own future. Weeks pass since Jack made the decision to accept Richard's offer, and with each day he immersed himself deeper into his new role. His commitment was unwavering. He worked tirelessly, absorbing everything he could about the business, learning from those around him, and proving that he was capable of far more than simply surviving. His focus, determination, and work ethic were evident to everyone around him. Jack wasn't just showing up anymore. He was actively contributing, taking on new responsibilities with a quiet strength that had once been hidden under layers of doubt. Richard, observing Jack's transformation from a distance, found himself increasingly impressed. The man who had once been invisible, struggling to survive, was now an essential part of the team. Jack's growth wasn't just about the work. He had gained a new confidence, a sense of purpose that had been missing before. He was no longer a passive figure. He was becoming a leader in his own right. Jack's natural charisma and unshakable resolve were beginning to shine through. He was no longer just taking orders. He was offering solutions, helping steer the company in directions that aligned with its vision. Slowly but surely, Jack began to lead meetings, making decisions that shaped the company's future. The same man who had once been afraid to step beyond his station was now confidently taking charge, guiding others and making key decisions. Richard watched with growing admiration, marveling at how Jack had risen above his circumstances. What had started as an act of desperation to survive had transformed into a story of remarkable self-improvement. One afternoon, after another productive day, Richard called Jack into his office. Jack's heart raced as he entered the room, uncertain about what Richard wanted. He had proven himself time and time again, but he still wasn't used to the attention, especially the praise. Richard looked up from his desk, his face filled with pride. This wasn't just a routine meeting. Jack could sense that something bigger was about to happen. "Jack," Richard began, his voice steady but filled with genuine admiration, "you've earned this. You've proven yourself in ways I didn't expect. I want you to be more than just an employee. I want you to be a partner." The words hit Jack like a wave. His mind struggled to process the meaning. A partner? It sounded unreal. He had never imagined such an opportunity for himself, never believed he could rise to such heights. "Partner?" Jack echoed, his voice thick with disbelief. The word felt foreign, like something that belonged in a world he'd never thought he could be part of. Richard smiled, the pride in his eyes unmistakable. "You've earned it, Jack. You're not just a survivor anymore. You're someone who can make a real difference. I've watched you grow, and I believe in you." Jack stood there stunned. The reality of what was happening began to sink in. This wasn't just about having a job anymore. This was a complete transformation, a recognition of his abilities, his dedication, and his potential. Jack had always been defined by survival, by the need to scrape by each day, but now he was being invited to help shape the future, to be a true partner in something meaningful. For the first time in his life, Jack felt like he had a purpose that went beyond mere survival. It was a realization that left him speechless. But deep inside, something shifted. He wasn't just part of a company anymore. He was a vital force in its success. As Richard extended his hand, Jack shook it, feeling the weight of the moment. This was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, and for the first time, he believed he deserved it. The transformation is complete. Jack stands before Richard's office window, gazing out at the sprawling city below. The skyline, once a distant dream, something that seemed out of his reach, is now his reality. He has come so far from the man who once walked the streets, invisible and forgotten. The life he had once accepted, the life of mere survival, has given way to something more profound, a life of purpose. This moment, standing in this office, looking out at the city he once thought belonged to others, is the culmination of everything he's worked for. But what Jack has learned in this journey is more significant than any job title or salary. He's learned that true transformation isn't about the external achievements. It's about growth from within. The lessons he's learned about bravery, self-worth, and the importance of taking risks have shaped him into someone entirely new. This isn't just about being given a chance. It's about realizing that you're worthy of the opportunities life presents and seizing them with both hands. Richard steps up behind him, his footsteps slow but deliberate. He places a hand on Jack's back, offering a silent acknowledgement of the man he has become. "I'm proud of you, Jack," Richard says, his voice filled with genuine pride. "You've shown me what it means to be truly brave. You've earned your place here." Jack smiles, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. But now there's a deep satisfaction in his eyes. His journey has not only transformed his life, but his perspective. He's no longer the man who struggled just to make it through the day. He's the man who now thrives in this world of opportunity and growth. He's embraced the reality of his worth, and for the first time in his life, he believes in himself fully. Richard's words resonate in his mind. Jack's eyes flicker with quiet pride. This moment, standing in front of the window with Richard by his side, marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The full circle of his journey is complete, but Jack knows that this is just the beginning. His journey has only just started, and with the foundation he's built, the future is wide open. There's still so much more for him to accomplish, and the best is yet to come.